Hello everybody, welcome here. We are really delighted to make this interview with Jerry Moe, whose book, Understanding Addiction and Recovery Through a Child's Eye, just been published in Hungary by the Hungarian Maltese Charity Service. Jerry Moe is one of the key and internationally acknowledged professionals in addiction, and he is the National Director of the Children's Programs at Betty Ford Center. And he spent more than 20 years treating people and families in recovery. Hi, Jerry. Really delighted that you accepted our invitation. And a huge congratulations to the book, to the Hungarian version of the book. I can show you. It's here.
Yeah. Gabi,
Jerry.
Thank you. I am delighted to be with you here today. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I must say, having this book in Hungary, a place that I've never been to, a culture that quite honestly, I don't know much about, but what I do know is that there are boys and girls there who are suffering as a result of addiction in their families. And my sincere hope is that this book not only helps them, but also helps their families.
Yeah, boys and girls, you said, and the title is also Addiction and Recovery Through a Child's Eye. How did you get affected? How did you get close to the kids affected by addiction? Why did you choose their point of view?
Well, I tell you a real personal story in that regard, Gabi, in that I grew up with this disease. And so in my own family, and I was incredibly blessed. At the age of 14, I got help. And my family slowly began to change. First my mom and then my dad. And pretty soon we were a family in recovery. And as a young adult, I knew I always wanted to work with children. I just loved kids. And I was grateful that I was helped at 14, but there was another part of me that said to myself, what would have happened if I'd got help when I was 7 or 8 or 10? And that boys and girls mired in this insidious disease of addiction shouldn't need to have to wait. We should be helping them now at all ages.
Yeah. And do you have a special method which you apply in recovery?
Sure. There are a number of things that we do, but I think that I have a dear colleague here in the United States who's looked upon as being a pioneer in this work. Her name is Dr. Claudia Black. And Dr. Black taught me all the way back in 1980 that boys and girls, no matter where they live, growing up with this disease, learn, don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. So the first thing we try to do is develop a relationship with boys and girls and get them to see that we care and we respect them. You know, I often say that kids don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. So we bring our heart and our soul. And Gabi, fascinating in that the work that I do is so different than the way that I was trained in graduate school to be a counselor. In that when we work with boys and girls, we work with them all day long. Not just for an hour, not just for 90 minutes. If you really want to develop a relationship with boys and girls, play with them, swim with them, eat with them, do group with them, and teach them. And so that building that relationship is key. We also do a lot of play, and that these are boys and girls, some of whom don't know how to play, but just to make it fun. And even the teaching that we do is very experiential. So it's up and moving and getting boys and girls actively involved in the process. So and we make a safe place where they know that they can trust us.
I remember I read the book and it had really a great impression on me. And it's full of stories very personal stories, and but the one which really had a great effect on me was when an older man called you, or you met him, and he said, "You remember me? I was 9 when I was in your camp, and the most important thing was that you paid attention to me, you take care of me, you wanted to have a relationship with me." And then I understood that you really give your heart to the work. It's not only a work to you, but it's really a mission, I can say.
Well, you're right. You're right. And I'll tell you, it was last 4th of July, which in America is Independence Day, and I'm at work and my phone rings. And I pick it up, and it was a gentleman that I worked with while he was in treatment. And July 4th was his 36th sobriety birthday. This guy's been sober for 36 years. And he called to thank me. And then he told me, he said, "You worked with my daughter, Sandy. She was 10 years old at the time." And now, so, do the math. All of a sudden, Sandy's 46 years old. And the dad hands her the phone. She's right there. And we talked. And in that particular case, because I couldn't see her, I think I remember her, but I'm not sure. But I asked her, I said, "What do you remember 36 years ago?" And she said, "I remember carrying the heavy bag of rocks." It's an activity that we do. "I remember playing the addiction game, where we teach kids how to separate the person from the disease, how to separate those two." And I said, "What else do you remember?" And she started to choke up and get emotional. And she said, "I remember how much you cared about me." And so many of these boys and girls are so emotionally hungry for love and attention and kindness. And that's exactly what we deliver to them.
Is it a new discovery that in healing process and in recovery, you pay attention to children or other family members and not to the addicted person?
Yeah, well, what we do is the children are our focus. But in the program that we do, pre-pandemic, because the pandemic has caused us to do everything virtually. So we've really had to change some things around. And boys and girls are still getting benefit. But in our regular 4-day program, parents or grandparents, they actually participate for a couple of days. And so they come too, and they're in a group. And it's funny that Mrs. Ford, Betty Ford, our dear First Lady, would always tell me, "Jerry, if you want to make a difference in a child's life, just don't help the child. Help who's ever raising that child." And so we'll work with the grown-ups as well. And it's interesting, Gabi, that I want to say that at least 75% of those grown-ups also grew up with addiction, also grew up with trauma in their lives. It's been passed generationally. And I often call those adults yesterday's children that no one helped. And so the same way we approach the kids, we do with the grown-ups as well. They've got a little wounded kid inside that needs to be loved and nurtured as well.
What you said regarding generations, does it mean that children coming from families with addictive problems are at risk of being addicted themselves later in their life? So the risk is much bigger?
You're absolutely right. I think if you look at the science, Gabi, we know that there's a biological predisposition, that addiction tends to run in families. But sometimes what people don't understand is that the boys and girls I work with, yes, they are at risk. And they have a greater vulnerability to get this disease, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily will. It doesn't mean that they necessarily will, but I think that genetic component, and then think about what goes on in families where there's addiction. There's a lot of fighting and inconsistency. There's other kind of traumas and broken promises and never know what's going to happen next. So I think for some, it's not only biology, but it's also environment and what gets passed along. And you know, and it's not just addiction that we see getting passed on generationally. It's mental health problems, it's abuse, it's violence, it's all of those things. And so, yeah, they do put boys and girls at risk. And I'll tell you what we tell little kids. We tell them that, not to scare them, you know, not to preach to them, but we tell, you know, I will tell a 10-year-old, you know, there's only one way I can make sure. There's only one way you can make sure you never get this disease. Don't take a drink, don't take a drug, don't smoke a cigarette. You can't get it. You can't get it. And I hope that you will wait. I hope that you will wait until you're an adult before you try some of those things. So there's a lot of hope and teaching kids, you know, living skills. And that's really what it is. How to communicate, how to ask for help, how to set boundaries, how to do self-care, how to handle stress. I mean, everybody needs those things. And to learn it as a child and to practice it, what an incredible opportunity.
It's obviously that there are a lot of reasons how can you get addicted. But my question is that how is it possible to survive in a family with addiction problems? Because children are in a very weak position. They do not have strength, or they do not have power. They can't affect on the member of the family. So what are their measures to survive?
Well, a few things come to mind. I think the first thing that's so important, there's been a lot of research done in America with people who grow up in really challenging families with a lot of adversity, a lot of difficulties. And in looking at people that overcome those, one of the things that's real clear in the research is the presence of a nurturing adult in their life. Now, maybe it can't be a member of their family. Maybe it's a grandmother, but maybe it's a teacher or a minister or a coach or the person next door. And so having adults that can tell them, hey, it's not your fault. And you can talk to me about this if you ever want to. And I would love to spend time with you on a weekly basis where we can just go and have fun. So that is a huge factor. And for boys and girls to have some place in their life where they can talk about this or they can communicate it. And it's fascinating, Gabi. What I see is some boys and girls, they can draw it. They're incredibly creative. So it could be artwork, could be a song that they write, could be a collage. Other boys and girls write. You know, sometimes boys and girls that are quiet in our program just write. And then all of a sudden the pen or the pencil takes off. And all this stuff flows out. Other boys and girls, they can just simply talk and being given permission to do that. And it's through play. It's through some of the experiential play that we do. But it's giving boys and girls an opportunity, because what we see so often is that, you know, this is a disease of isolation and silence and secrecy and shame. And it's not just the person with the substance use disorder who feels that. So do kids. And if nobody explains to me in an age-appropriate way what's going on in my family, I'm going to make up a story for it all to make sense. And so many boys and girls come to us, and part of the story they make up is, it must be me. It must be me. I had a moment with a little boy on the phone a couple weeks ago. Because again, we're not doing in person yet. And he tells me, I'm going to get emotional. He tells me, are you sure it's not my fault? And I go, it's not your fault. He says, are you positive it's not my fault? And he starts to cry. And I go, yeah, I'm positive. And what he did, Gabi, is he just took this deep breath and body just kind of collapsed in the chair. And listen to what he said. He said, you know, when my mom started drinking really bad, my dad sent me to live at grandma's house, which was a well-intentioned thing by the dad, but he didn't explain the why to that little boy. You know what the little boy said? And then I thought, maybe if I go away, my mom can get better. because it's really my fault. And for boys and girls to carry that kind of pain inside, oh my goodness. And for me to say, no, 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 no. Let's talk to dad. Dad sent you to grandma so you would be safe, but not because you're at fault. So teaching that to boys and girls is so important, letting them know that they're not alone. That's why, unless it's indicated differently, and you read the book, most of the work that we do is in group, because kids need to be with other kids. And it's amazing. Usually the second day it clicks and they go, you mean sometimes you get scared when the weekend comes too? Because you're not sure what's going to happen? Or your dad and mom fight and they say they hate each other and they're going to get a divorce, and then you thought it was your fault, or you're embarrassed and you don't want to bring anybody home for fear that they're going to find out, so you just can't have play dates. For kids to see they're not alone. And in America, we're talking almost about 1 out of every 3 children, 1 out of 3 has someone they love who has this disease. And ironically, so many of them think they're the only one. So changing that narrative, helping them to see that it's not their fault, and teaching them some ways to stay safe, really important, really important.
I see. The other side, what I also read in your book, that these children have special abilities and strengths because the environment and the situations force them to be strong. How can you nurture these strengths in recovery?
Well, in a couple of ways, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because for the longest time in America, when we talked about boys and girls living with addiction, we looked at it mostly from a damage model, like what's wrong with them, what's happened to them, what's missing, and to look at it from a strength-based way, like what are some of the gifts and what are some of the skills and talents, boys and girls. And so again, back to the point I made before, Gabi, it's building relationships, because if I don't get to spend enough time with you, I clearly can't see your strengths. But in children's programs, symbolically, it's like me holding up this mirror to you and saying, oh, Gabi, I have never seen a little boy or little girl write the way that you write. I want you to keep writing. I want you to keep a journal. Here's a journal. Take this. And Billy, oh my goodness, what a friend you are to everybody here. You're one of the youngest, and yet you care about everybody in this group. And so, we want to hold up a mirror and we want to catch kids doing good things. Yeah. And then tell them about it. Yeah, wow, that was outstanding. And then, like any program, what we do is continuing care. Because I would be the last person, Gabi, to tell you that, so you spend 4 days and you spend 25 hours and you're just opening the door a little bit at the Betty Ford Center Children's Program. And so we do weekly continuing care where kids come for an hour then, and we send them a newsletter every couple months, and we keep sending them books to reinforce the message. And we encourage them to call us or email us anytime that they want. But yeah, let me point out what's wonderful about you. And it's funny because sometimes boys and girls walk in convinced that what we're going to do is tell them that it is their fault. Yeah. And they're not good kids. And I've never met a kid that's not a good kid. And so to be able to say, no. You're filled with beauty and grace. And we'll figure out more ways for you to develop that. And the hope always is, and it's amazing in that the staff here, mostly young, thank goodness, mostly young, but we complement each other, but we're all really different. And I'm just amazed at how children tend to one of us, or you just pick one of us, and then we continue to build that relationship, and they know, no matter how old they are. And it's funny, the story that you told yesterday at the Betty Ford Center. This is in the first time in 15 months, we did an in-person thing. and that we did a groundbreaking ceremony at the Betty Ford Center. And so we invited 125 people. Oh my gosh, how I have missed that in-person contact. But like so many times, there was a young man, 19 years old, and he was part of the video crew. I didn't even know he was there. And he came up to me and hugged me and said, "Do you remember me?" I mean, that same thing again. And I did. And we're going to get together next week. And I pointed out how far he's come. So yeah, let's look at all the good stuff. That help people move forward. So important.
Yeah. The humor is also a part of your book, and you
it has to be.
You're writing in a quite light-hearted way, which is really good, and humor can also part of the recovery, I'm sure. But there is a very serious example in the book, the rock garden and the stones. And it's a really different approach, as we realized here in Hungary. That's how beautiful it is.
You know, it's funny that talk about, and we call it the bag of rocks. And so everybody that's watching, what it is, and I just had picked it up down the hallway just a little bit ago, Gabi. So your timing to talk about this is perfect. And that we have a backpack and it's filled with rocks, and all of the rocks are painted, and on the rocks might be a feeling like sad or hurt or confused or scared. One of the rocks has just the word secrets, the secrets we keep, not good secrets, you know, the secrets that aren't so good. And then some of the rocks have a problem on them, like fighting or abuse or addiction. And so kids carry the bag, and they get to feel you know, how heavy it is. And then what we tell boys and girls is that their moms and dads have been carrying around a bag like that since they were little kids. And you know, and I've had a chance through the years to work with kids in different parts of the world. And no matter where I've been, that activity has always worked. No matter what culture, because I think kids are kids, and it's really very relatable. It's kinesthetic. They're moving around and carrying it. And then it's really actually not till the next day, Gabi, that we tell them, well, you have your own bag of rocks. So let's figure out some ways to not have to carry all that stuff around all the time.
Yeah, it can be a really great experience for those children, I'm sure. Once you wrote to us that one of your big dreams came true, became reality with the translation of your book into Hungarian. Do you have another dream, maybe?
Sure. I mean, I've got a lot. Gabi, I've got a lot of dreams. I would just love to see more boys and girls be helped by this. And wherever I've traveled, and every culture is different, every language is different. But I gotta say that wherever I've gone, little boys and little girls are little boys and little girls all over this world, all over this planet. So giving them more opportunities to learn about this, to see that it's not their fault. They're not alone. They're filled with beauty and goodness. So that is a dream. I mean, when all of the kind folks got a hold of me and you know and said, "Hey, we want to translate this into Hungarian." Yeah, of course. And so a more specific dream for all of you. I'd love to come there someday. I would love to come there someday and spend time with boys and girls. I like to come there someday and help all the professionals who are helping these boys and girls. I like to come there someday and give a message of hope to all Hungarian people that we can get beyond this disease and find a life of recovery and peace and serenity. So that's a dream too.
The book is here. I can show it, the Hungarian version. To whom would you recommend it especially?
Gosh, it's used across the board. Sometimes it's a great book for someone in early recovery from alcoholism or drug addiction to read, to not only understand more about their own children, but maybe to understand what they went through as kids, for family members to read. So for parents and grandparents to better make sense of what's going on in their families. I think anybody who works with kids on a daily basis, Gabi, whether it's a teacher, a coach, a minister, a band leader, what have you, it would be good for them too. And sometimes it's just good for the general public that want to learn more. I think, and my intention in writing it is that, you know, I've had this front row seat, and I've had the opportunity to work with extraordinary boys and girls and adults who had the courage and strength to bring them to this program and to say, hey, there is a better way. And here's some tools, because you don't have to do this alone. We can do this together.
Yeah, we can say that one of the biggest problem of the 21st century is addiction. But maybe your slogan is that together we will overcome addiction. Am I right? That's what I read.
You were absolutely right. It takes all of us, because there's so few people whose lives haven't been touched by this awful disease. And whether it's in their own family, or maybe in the family of a friend they're close to, or a coworker. I mean, there was a study done a long time ago, all the way back to the 1980s. So Gabi, I'm aging myself right in front of you. But there was a Gallup poll, you know, very respected poll in America. And what the poll said was 43% of all Americans said, yes, addiction is in my family. And think about all the people that said no when the answer was yes. So it is a huge problem. And with the pandemic in the United States and everybody sheltering in place, oh my goodness, as we're coming out of this, the people that are asking for help for mental health issues, for addiction, I don't know how we'll keep up with it.
So you have done a lot of work.
Oh, yes.
Oh, as always, I think.
Yes.
You work intensively and very actively, and you see more and more boys and girls to save. And do you work on a new book or a new program? I don't know. But I would like to say really thank you for your time. And we hope that it was just the start of our cooperation. And the translation of this book, the Hungarian Maltese Charity Service tries to forward it everywhere where it is important, where it can help. And we just wish all the best to you. And blessings for your further work, and really many recovered persons, and many supported and saved. I don't know, you use the word saved children, but really the children who are in the most disadvantaged situation in this problem. Thank you for spending this time with us.
Well, Gabi, thank you for your kindness, your graciousness. This is a highlight for me. I will not forget this time together. And again, just the thought that this book is in Hungary and children can be helped by it, boy, that is beyond my wildest imagination. So just thank you for all you do. And I look forward to the next time our paths can cross again.
Super. See you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
May I?